Okay, so this article was on newborn and early infant outcomes following maternal COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy. We had already sort of briefly gone through the abstract, so I'll just redo it. So this is a retrospective cohort study in Ontario, Canada. So they looked at singleton live births, so that means not twins. We had looked that up last time because that was a weird phrasing. So singleton means single births, with an expected delivery date between May of 2021 and September of 2022. So this would be from about the Delta to XBB, I think, is that range in terms of variance. Maybe even just BA4, BA5 at that point. So that was the time scale, and then they're looking at maternal mRNA COVID vaccination, 1 or more doses during pregnancy, receiving multiple doses of the vaccine during pregnancy. The main outcome that they looked at was, so we highlighted this one because they use the abbreviation a lot, so SNM is severe neonatal morbidity, and in this retrospective cohort study they looked at 142,000 infants, about half and half male-female at birth. About 86,000 were exposed to 1 or more COVID vaccine doses in utero, so the mother received the vaccination. So they're looking at if there was like a vertical transmission of antibodies from the vaccine from the mother to the infant, to the fetus. And they found that neonatal deaths were decreased. They found that NICU admission was slightly decreased. There did not seem to be an association between vaccination during pregnancy and neonatal readmission, so there weren't like further follow-ups that they had to do because of some unforeseen side effects of the vaccine, which is great to see. And then this population-based study in Ontario, Canada, with mRNA COVID vaccination. So this isn't going to be applicable to Novavax. That's the protein-based one. They specifically looked at mRNA, so that would be Moderna, that would be Pfizer. And they showed that the vaccination during pregnancy was associated with lower risks of the SNM, severe neonatal morbidity. So a quick aside. Morbidity and mortality. Morbidity is the complication, mortality is the death, so that's what it means when it says morbidity. And then neonatal death and then NICU admission were all lower risks, so it seems to have a net benefit effect. In addition, neonatal and 6-month readmissions were not increased in infants of mothers vaccinated during pregnancy, so after 6 months' time there wasn't any complications that occurred because of this. And then, let me just wet my whistle. So that's the high-level overview. That's what an abstract does. It gives you the high-level overview, and then you dive into the and dissect the paper from there. And that's what we're going to do. And then, so pregnant women have an increased risk of severe COVID-19 compared with their non-pregnant counterparts. One of the interesting things is, very cool, yes. One of the things is SARS-CoV-2 placentitis. People in the second trimester seem to be getting this very severely. We've discussed that in other papers, but that's one of the things. So, anyways, back to the paper. COVID-19 during pregnancy has been associated with fetal and neonatal morbidity and mortality. Oops, that's yellow. Vaccination is routinely recommended to protect pregnant women and their newborn infants from acute respiratory tract infections such as influenza, pertussis. I don't know what pertussis is, I'm going to look that up. Pertussis. Whooping cough. Oh, okay. Whooping cough. I know what whooping cough is. Interesting. That's a fun word. Pertussis. Okay, so pertussis. and pregnant women are designated a priority group for COVID-19 vaccination in multiple countries. Whoopee cough. I'm a mom. Yeah, you can tell I'm not a dad yet, so I have to. It's good I'm learning these words before I become a father. Not that that's gonna happen anytime soon. Teamwork, yes, teamwork. Um, and that's like the whole point. Like, you don't have to know everything going into a paper. You can literally just Google and look up things as you read and put it into context. You go, huh, that's curious. Let me learn more about this. You learn about it, come back to the paper, then you have the guide, the grounded context. So like, you don't have to be a genius to be doing this stuff. So, observational studies have demonstrated that the immunogenicity and effectiveness of COVID vaccines are similar in pregnant and non-pregnant populations. Okay, so that's just saying vaccines are effective. Yeah, I agree. Moreover, COVID vaccination during pregnancy confers protection to infants during the first month of life. Cool, that's nice to know. And increased rates of adverse pregnancy or perinatal outcomes include spontaneous abortion, so that's going to be important. So we'll make that green. So, like, for people that are vaccine hesitant for pregnancy, don't be. They have not seen any epidemiologic studies that have shown that the vaccines during pregnancy have caused any adverse pregnancy events. It's not caused spontaneous abortion, stillbirth, or preterm birth. These are things that are actually associated with COVID, but the vaccine will not cause these things, so that's very important to know. And then I'm sorry, I haven't done my Control S to override the files. Papers to read. Save. Yes, I want to replace it. So, despite this evidence, vaccine coverage of pregnant women has been lower than in non-pregnant women of reproductive age in many regions, especially among younger women, women living in areas with higher socioeconomic deprivation. Uncertainty about vaccine safety for the infant was one of the most frequently reported reasons for lack of intent to get vaccinated during pregnancy. Data from large populations and infant incomes following exposure to COVID-19 vaccines in utero are of high importance could bolster vaccine confidence in pregnant women. Are limited at the stage. Several studies have examined the association between COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy and admission to the neonatal intensive care unit (NICU) and neonatal respiratory complications, but few have assessed a broader range of important neonatal outcomes, and only one, to our knowledge, has reported safety outcomes for infants far beyond the neonatal period. To assess this knowledge gap, we sought to determine if maternal mRNA COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy was associated with an increased risk of newborn or adverse newborn and early infant outcomes. So that's just a mouthful of words that they're saying, we're interested in this. So they're excluding infants with a gestational age less than 20 weeks or birth weight less than 500 grams, so they're not looking at preemies. So I was a preemie, so if I was born then, I would not have been included in the study. Oh no, they also excluded people that lost health insurance. They got rid of people that, infants that didn't have complete birth records or records that could not be linked to databases. And they got rid of any infants of mothers younger than 12 and older than 50 years. That would be the mother's age, not the infant's age. Alright, and then their data sources. That's weird. This nonprofit ICES organization apparently can collect Ontario's health information. The privacy laws allows it to collect and analyze healthcare and demographic data without consent. I mean, good for researchers, but that's kind of unnerving. We define maternal vaccination as receipt of one or more RNA doses between the estimated date of conception and 1 day before birth. 1 day before birth. How much is actually gonna in Canada? Yes, this is in Ontario, Canada. Public, the Ontario Public Health, I believe. It should say in the little descriptions. Well, it says right there, maybe Ontario, Canada, corresponding author. But, yeah, the Ontario Public Health System, if I'm recalling correctly, is the source of this study. But 1 day before birth, I really don't think that's going to confer, like, we as adults, it takes like 2 weeks for us to mount a full antibody response to the mRNA vaccine, so their cutoff should have been like 2 weeks before the birth, at minimum. I don't see a day before birth conferring any immunity, so that's just a weird cutoff. Interesting. Yep. Mothers were considered unvaccinated if they received no COVID vaccine doses, preconception, or at any point during pregnancy. And mothers who received 1 or more COVID doses before conception were excluded. Save. So in terms of the vaccine timescale, so that's good to note. I will highlight that. So this is in the time period when the vaccines first became available. So some people are getting their primary vaccine, some people are getting their primary and their secondary. So that's why the pregnant mothers were having multiple vaccines. I was like sitting here like, why would they be getting multiple vaccines based off our current stuff? But I forgot to backtrack. So around that time, so the general guidance I think was something like you get your primary vaccine and then you get your secondary vaccine about 3 weeks afterwards to generate that full immune response. Interestingly, with only just a single vaccine, it only conferred that active immunity for about 56 days. But once you get that secondary vaccine in the primary series, it conferred immunity for about 216 days from that second dose. So that's interesting. I think Moderna was too. Is Moderna was too for like pregnant individuals or just like Pfizer was 3 maybe? Well, I had Pfizer and I was only allowed 2 for the primary, but I was allowed a third. There was that period. So a little vaccine overview. So there's the primary series 1 and 2, and then there was an optional booster, and I was able to get that. I don't know if that was Pfizer only. I thought it was for all the ones because my partner got Moderna the first 2 times, and then Pfizer the third time. 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. That sounds right. I don't remember what I said, but yeah, 3 weeks sounds right. From the first to the third. From the first of the primary to the second in the primary series. But it was like 56 days where it conferred active immunity for just the first shot, and then it did like 216 days or something like that. It was a really interesting paper. I have it in one of my playlists on the vaccine. So that's why the mothers in this study are getting more than one vaccination. So now they're going to define their severe neonatal morbidity, those adverse complications. It includes 15 diagnoses and 7 procedures during birth or within the first 28 days after birth. My buddy was pregnant. I don't believe she had a different schedule, but yes, to an additional booster. Yeah. Okay. So let's quickly open supplemental information number 1. Just because I'm interested in what these... backtrack. So if you ever want to look at the supplemental information from a paper, they're usually hyperlinked, and you just click on that like I just did, and it'll take you to this, and then you usually have to scroll in here for the supplemental information. What's that? Did I click on something? So let's see, discussion conclusion, probably in references. Usually they actually have a supplemental information section. Nope, article information. Otherwise I'm going to try this attachment thing. But at the same time, people have their own stuff going on, so it all depends on DocRec. Exactly. Yeah, it all depends on DocRec. And that was also like, here we go, supplemental. Supplemental 2, supplemental 1. And like those guidelines are constantly changing. So this should be openings. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidebar a bit. No need to apologize at all. That's sort of the point of these lives, besides going through the papers, and being more fun for me to go through the papers, is just to like have the little sidebars. Yes, they really are. And then it also fills the space during these loadings. Alright, so we're going to scroll down to, it should have some sort of table. My computer doesn't like running very well when I am live streaming. I probably need a new computer, but here we go. Nope, that's databases. Here we go. Alright, let's zoom in. Let me know when you guys can see it. I might have to try a different way of zooming. Let's try desktop view. Oh, there's the zoom button. It's just not where it normally is. Ah! Oh, it's opening the PDF. Okay, so these are the complications, or the morbidity qualifications, it looks like. So gestational age less than 32 weeks, birth weight less than 1,500 grams, so these are preemies. Respiratory distress, seizures, grade 2 to 4, intraventricular hemorrhage, so that's the blood clots. Cerebral infarction, that would be bad. Periventricular leukomalacia, I'm not familiar with that. Birth trauma, intracranial hemorrhage, paralysis due to brachial plexus injury, skull or long bone fracture, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, necrotizing enterocolitis, bronchopulmonary dysplasia, sepsis, pneumonia, resuscitation. Okay, yeah, these are just standard things. You can see. Good. So we'll jump back to the, I guess I'll just leave that open in case we need it again. But, so those were the things. And then previous population-based studies. And they're defining neonatal mortality as infant death during the first 28 days of life. Neonatal in 6-month readmission is in the first 28 or 6 months of life. 1 second, I have to go yell at my dogs. They're barking. Don't know if you can hear them. BRB. I'm back. Okay. Once they start barking, they don't stop barking, so I have to usually be like, guys, come in. They excluded infants that died during birth. They adjusted for covariates. That's always good. I hate when people do odds ratios. Like, just give us the data. But I know that doctors really like odds ratios. I just think they can easily be, like, manipulated. Especially if you have low numbers. Oh my god, it's a 60% increase. It's a 1.61 odds ratio. And it's like, okay, but you're going from like 10 to 14. They're just kind of saying what they've already said. I don't know what short videos are. It tells me when people join from short videos. So this is a breakdown of all the ones that are excluded, why they were excluded, how many were excluded, the live births. So like this is like our population that we're working with, and from that how many more were excluded, which gives us our current number, and then these are our vaccine exposed and vaccine unexposed, so our control group and our active group. So that's good. Let's see if I can. I remember there was a shape thing. I don't remember how to access it. Draw freehand. Boom. I'm gonna keep that for later. Save. Why are they doing a bias correction? Okay, so they're just testing if, I'm not sure what they were testing, they didn't seem to say, but they're testing to see if there's, if a confounding variable is influencing it by, like, randomly increasing it and decreasing it to see if it has a significant effect, because if it has a significant effect on these two groups, the vaccinated and unvaccinated groups, then it could be biasing the results, so that's what they're testing. And it looks like they did not find anything significant. Which gives further confidence to the results that they're producing. And now we're in the exciting section, results. So that's interesting. Compared with mothers in the unvaccinated group, those that were vaccinated during pregnancy were more likely to be older than 30. And residents of urban areas and areas with higher income. So it's suggesting that that would be outside millennial age, or millennial age. Anyways, people older than 30 seem to be more likely to get the COVID vaccine while pregnant, and these people generally live in urban areas, so busier areas, and they have higher incomes. So that shows that there's some sort of socioeconomic factor at play, which likely means that people in lower socioeconomic statuses have a harder time accessing the vaccines, is usually how you have to interpret that type of statement. And that younger people under 30, so people with less access to resources, have less access to the vaccines and to having the knowledge, the safety factor, access to the doctors that can reassure them that it's safe and okay. That's usually what that type of thing means. That'll be nice if they have a breakdown. So, of the vaccinated mothers, about half had one dose, about half had 2 doses, and then a very small percentage had 3 doses of the COVID vaccine during pregnancy. But it sounds like they pooled everything together, but if they do have a breakdown, that would be really interesting to see. What was that? I went too fast. Oh, that's interesting. Make that green. So, and it breaks it down by trimester, so there's about half got vaccinated in the first trimester, about 33%, a third, got vaccinated in the second trimester, and then, what's that number, percentage? And 45% in the third trimester. And most of the women got the BNT16B2, which I believe is the, let's just double check, I think it's Pfizer, but I don't remember. BNT162B2. Because BioNTech, yeah, it's Pfizer, I don't need to look it up. BioNTech, that's Pfizer. Because Pfizer is Pfizer/BioNTech. Because they bought the BioNTech company. So about 70% of the women that got vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. And then the morbidity, the death, and the NICU admission, and vaccinated mothers was lower than with unvaccinated mothers, and then sort of with our odd ratios, we got 0.86. For morbidities, for neonatal deaths, 0.47. That's a significant drop, less than half the frequency of occurrence in vaccinated mothers than unvaccinated mothers. And we have modest reductions of frequency of occurrence for the morbidity and then the NICU admission. And then there is no change in the readmission. Essentially 5.5%, 5.1%, that's essentially negligible. Yeah, and they said right there, not statistically significant after adjusting for confounding variables. So it looks like the results were largely unchanged by the number of vaccine doses during pregnancy or the trimester or infant sex. That's an interesting one. Or the vaccine product. But again, 70% were getting the Pfizer vaccine, so that's not, when you have 70%, 30%, that's not that big of a difference. It's basically saying that, so they had like 1, 2, 3 vaccines during the pregnancies, they'd had first, second, third trimesters, and it's saying that just one vaccine should cover you for pregnancy. At least from this one study, it's saying that the when you get it in the trimesters likely doesn't influence it. How many you get likely doesn't influence it. So long as you get vaccinated during pregnancy, it should provide these protective effects. But the big caveat is these mothers did not get COVID during the pregnancy, so the true effect is going to be seeing not just the vaccination, but the vaccination and COVID and the not vaccination and COVID infection. That's going to be the true differentiating thing. So this is just one piece. This is saying that without COVID infection, these are the outcomes. It provides a protective effect. But what would be the next step would be saying, hey, these are vaccinated people, these are unvaccinated people during pregnancy. Both groups got the COVID infection during pregnancy at what different trimester. So you would have to look at the time from vaccination to the COVID infection. You'd have to look at the trimester that they were vaccinated, the trimester they were infected, and see what type of variables and effects those would have. That would make a really interesting study, and that would be very powerful. I haven't actually seen anything like that, but that's it just to ground these statements in the larger perspective of things. So I'm not really interested in the table right now, just because I can tell they did a very good study. It would be interesting as time goes by to see the new data that comes out. Yes, it's going to be very interesting, and there's a very good study that recently started. It looks like it's going to be a good study, but unfortunately we have to wait a couple years before we can get the results of it. That is tracking specifically mothers that got COVID during their pregnancies. They're tracking the children and their development over time for the first, I think it was 2 years of life. So they're going to be comparing that to mothers that didn't get infected. That's a new thing that I saw in one of the news articles that just came out a couple days ago. So that'll be a very interesting study, but again, like, we won't know for years. It's going to be at least 2 years for that, all the data processing, so it's likely going to be 3 years from now that we'll get that data. Now we're moving on to the discussion section of the paper. So they usually just reiterate the findings. That's what they're doing here at the beginning of this discussion. So I usually don't like commenting on it again because we just went through it in pretty good depth. So like, yeah, that's interesting that they did the vaccine doses during pregnancy at the different trimesters. That's very good. Timing of the doses. Pfizer is the majority. Interval between doses. So like, this is a very well done study. Yeah, so they excluded infants of mothers with documented COVID infection during pregnancy. But that's like the next phase, so if they were going to reprocess all of this data that they did, what I would imagine their next study would be what I essentially said earlier, is looking at the ones that got the COVID infection, seeing how that differs from the two vaccinated and unvaccinated groups. That's the next logical step. And then, they break it into sections. Fantastic. So comparison with other studies, that's usually the next part of this discussion. You do a summation of your results, you compare it with other studies, you say how these studies found this thing that agrees with my stuff, these other studies found this stuff that doesn't agree with my stuff, this is why we think that our study fits in the big old picture of the information, and we don't know why, or this is why we think their study results were different, type of thing. Yeah, so it's saying that other studies have reported no increased risk of NICU admission for mothers that receive vaccine doses compared with infants of unvaccinated mothers. So again, the COVID vaccine is not causing issues. And in other studies, less than 25% of mothers were vaccinated in the studies compared to... So it's just like a low vaccine population. So like when you have a smaller pool of data that you're trying to extrapolate out to a population scale, you're going to have more error introduced. So usually you want the largest sample size possible, which is why these retrospective studies are usually very beneficial, because you can have a much larger pool of people to go from, and that gives you a much better population level estimate. And then, similar to their findings, other studies have shown that there's lower lower levels of neonatal adverse outcomes. Again, it's not a huge difference. It's dropping from 11% to 8%, but that's significant enough because you always want to mitigate as much risk as possible. So even, what is that, a 3% drop, 8, 9, 10, 11, yeah, 3% drop, that's significant. And yeah, this is just, so like this study is very, very well done. Kudos to the authors. But it's just showing that the safety profile is very good for mothers, for pregnant mothers. And it supports the evidence that we're finding in much smaller studies, showing that there's no risk. But there are definitely potential benefits. Specifically, I think the highest one was in the deaths. It's decreasing the deaths that come from it didn't like look specifically at mothers that got COVID infections, but that would be the assumption. But the death risk is dropping in half for mothers that are vaccinated. It's weird that they're stating this because they literally showed that, I'm going to make this purple. Purple is when I don't agree with things that people say in their papers. So they said earlier in the paper, so it is a 5.5% readmission rate, or percentage of ones that were readmitted in the study for vaccinated versus a 5.1%. And when they ran, like this, these are very, very similar numbers, 5.5%, 5.1%, that's a 0.4% difference, and when they ran stats on it, they were not statistically significant, meaning they're the same from a population level. So if these were error bars, you would have them like very, very slightly offset like this, and that is the same essentially. So it's weird that they mentioned it, because they already showed that it's statistically not different. So like that's the way you're supposed to say it, but like in essence it means that since they're not different, they're the quote unquote the same. Don't come at me, stats people. I know stats. I know that it's not statistically significantly different is how we say it, but it's just saying that there's not a difference. They're the same. And then this is a nice table where they're just showing the differences with the odds ratios over here. Sorry, I'm just glancing through their limitations and strengths. It doesn't look like there's anything that they're going to be That's a good note. So, despite our large, it's yellow. Despite our large sample size, our study might have been underpowered to rule out small associations for rare events such as neonatal mortality. So there could be like rare things that might occur commonly in the population that they're not accounting for. This is like saying our unknown unknowns. There are things that might influence neonatal death that they're not aware of in terms of vaccination, not vaccination, but that they're just acknowledging that. So I think that's an interesting caveat aside. So like, there's always like our known knowns, our known unknowns, and our unknown unknowns. So like for an example, with our current COVID surge, we have our known knowns, which is like this is wastewater concentration, this is things going up, people get infected. COVID is a very social related disease. So like when you have things like Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's where people all come into contact and congregate, you're going to have these increases in cases, but then you have your known unknowns. So like 3 months ago you can predict, alright, so we have BA2.86, which is a variant that is very far mutated away from the current ones. This is one that we should watch out for. Maybe it will have a mutant in the future, or a subvariant in the future that will be more contagious than BA2.86s, which we're not too worried about because it has a low contagion profile, it doesn't seem more transmissible. But this is something we should think, so that's like a known unknown. And then you have like your unknown unknowns, such as like until recently knowing that the viral load is shifting to the 3 to 5 days after symptoms, when we've been going off of guidance for the first day of symptoms, which is where viral loads have peaked in the past. So that's going to be contributing to more people spreading COVID, being symptomatic, going into work sick, testing for 2 times for 48 hours for people that are doing it according to FDA guidance, being like, oh, I don't have COVID, but because the viral load's peaking later, it wouldn't be detected on the rapid test until later, so that's like an unknown unknown, because it's now a known unknown, but before, we didn't know that. Before that study in September dropped, that wasn't a common knowledge thing. So that would be an example of things that can like influence how COVID wastewater is changing over time, and the infection risks, which also corresponds with why we didn't immediately see a spike in wastewater right after Thanksgiving. It took like a week and a half to actually start spiking, and that's because of this delayed viral load increase, because when you have that high viral load, you're going to be shedding more from your nasal, your mouth, your urine, your feces, your poop. So like that's the type of stuff that would be like an unknown unknown until we know it. So cool. So yeah, COVID vaccines are safe. My Massachusetts city's data is still not back up. I don't remember if anything specifically is going on in Massachusetts. I think this is my brief association recollection. I don't remember the word right now, but I'm recalling that Massachusetts might have just switched to Verily from BioBot, which means that wastewater scan is going to be processing the data, so they have to set up all that stuff. So they might be in a transition period where they're transferring over the contractors and the process flows and who to send the wastewater to, how to do the analysis. And if you look on like the CDC's webpage, the data isn't going to be back online for like 6 weeks from when it actually starts. So it could be one of those impacted facilities. I don't know. I feel like the delay of viral load is a driving force. Yes, that's definitely a huge driving force to this winter wave in terms of the high false negative rate, the later, so like, because people can be infectious before they have symptoms, and also like during those symptoms, and when it's peaking later, people are doing their 5 days, they're going back to work. So like you take your first, if you're taking your 5 days off, so you take your first day off on initial symptoms. By the time you're getting back to work at the end of the 5 days, your viral load is going to be near the highest that it is. So you're going to be going to work and infecting people. If you're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, if you're not having a well-fitted N95 and you're wearing a loose surgical mask, or if you're not wearing a mask at all after the 5 days isolation, then it's like the perfect storm for infecting people. I don't. Last info. Oop, I missed some comments. I got distracted by my thoughts. Last info on the charts is end of November. They said it's still BioBot. So BioBot is only receiving data voluntarily right now. Wastewater facilities can send them the data and they'll publish the data, but the contractor officially changed to Verily in, I want to say late November, early November, November 1st. I don't remember the exact time. You can look through some of my videos to try and figure that out. Or just Google it. But BioBot is contesting this switch in contractor, so it's been delayed. A lot of the wastewater facilities were shut down indefinitely until the contract dispute is resolved. So that is likely what's happening to your Massachusetts wastewater data. They want 6 weeks of data. Yeah, they want, at least for publishing on the CDC website. I'm not so sure about Verily. Verily is still only just replicating what Wastewater Scan is doing, but recently we found out that Verily is subcontracting Wastewater Scan to collect and process the data. So I'm not sure. Verily hasn't done any updates publicly about what's changing. I don't get why Maryland is having issues with data. It's really out of character. Sorry, I meant why Maryland is having data issues. It's likely similar. And then some states, I don't know specifically for Maryland, I don't know specifically for Massachusetts, but some states have taken away their COVID dashboards, or in the process of discontinuing their COVID dashboards, which would include the wastewater data, so that might be something too, but again, I don't know specifically for those two states. What an awful time to have no information. Yes, it's a very bad time to not have information. It's a bad time for a contract dispute, and like, I want us to be very clear at who we point the finger to. It's the CDC. The CDC is the top level that is managing the contracts. They did not set up a contract transition plan. They were not clear with BioBots, so they got BioBot angry because BioBot's like, I've been doing this for 4 years, why are you switching now? And I'm doing everything, while Verily's literally just a data processing center. They are not even doing the second half, and now we found out that how they're doing the second half is they're subcontracting to another contractor. So they didn't come up with a transition plan to allow for retrospective data comparisons. So when we do this full transition from BioBot to Verily, we won't have a direct way to be able to compare back for the past 4 years since 2020, when the wastewater scan on BioBot at least was available. It's going to be different processing, it's going to be different analyses, it's going to be different data centers processing centers, so it's going to be very hard to compare retrospectively, and it's just like a big old mess, and we don't even know if the old BioBot data is going to be integrated into the new Verily website. There's a lot of unknowns about this, but it all is just really bad. I know it feels intentional, especially considering it's the CDC's fault. Agreed, it's hard to think it's not. Yeah. But I see Mandy Cohen sort of sitting there going, I want to make the CDC trustable again, so I'm going to be a political face, and I'm going to be the kind face of the CDC, and she's like literally just going state to state to state doing this political tour, doing all these interviews, when it's like, okay, but what are you doing to actually make sure everything's running properly? And clearly she's not doing the actual hard work, which is making sure that you have clear discussions with contractors, that you're making up transition plans to make sure things are running smoothly, is not like fully integrated into the HICPAC decisions, and like that's been sitting on her desk for what is it, like 3 weeks now, and we have no idea what the status of that is for those drafts. It does not seem like Mandy Cohen is doing the actual work of a CDC director. It seems like she wants to leverage this position, in my opinion, to jump to a higher level, which would be some sort of health department role in the U.S. government. I don't think she's doing her job appropriately. It seems like the U.S. didn't want to ruin the economy of the holiday sales. It's hard to think it's not. I hate how she seemed to be better when she was just like. So I think so. I've heard that a lot, and I briefly looked into it. So this is basically just my overview opinion as an outsider from a different state that isn't very familiar with Mandy Cohen. I think that the governor was actually the one that was like very progressive, and that she was doing her political camouflage and was just going along with it, and that's what I think happened there, and why people thought she was so good when she's not. And then she just fell in line. Yep, she just fell in line because she describes herself as politically purple, which means she's a Republican, and like she literally has not done anything that like is the government. There is definitely a blue dot and a red seat. Yes. So I really think it was more the governor that was leading all of those great things, and she was just like the person that happened to be there. That was just riding the wave, and she rode the wave to a more prominent position. And I think what she's trying to do as CDC director is riding that wave to a higher level in the government, because it doesn't seem like she's doing anything but being a politician, or being like a political face. But I don't know. I'm very bitter and jaded, so other people could have different opinions. But let's do the high-level overview of everything we learned in this paper. Ugh. Let me drink some water. Throat's getting a little sore. Okay. Yeah, she was kind of advertised as having such a good, strong and good response to COVID. Highly bitter and jaded here. Yeah, me too. And on it, like, that's what really confused me, because like from day one when she walked in without a mask into our new CDC director, Mandy Cohen, I was like, this is our progressive, strong advocate for COVID stuff that apparently she was doing in her home state of whatever it was, North Carolina, wherever it was. So yeah, I was very disappointed. Be as salty as you want to be. So in this paper, it's a retrospective cohort study from Ontario, Canada. It looked at births between May 2021 and September 2022. It looked at people that were vaccinated. They could have been vaccinated one time, they could have been vaccinated 3 times. 70% of them had the Pfizer vaccine. About 30% had Moderna. It was all mRNA-based vaccines. Excuse me. There was a lot of participants in the study, but the major thing is that 60% were vaccinated. The mothers were vaccinated during pregnancy, so the fetus was getting the exposure in utero. So they were seeing the effects. They were looking at the effects of vaccination on neonatal outcomes to see if there were any adverse situations that were happening from the vaccine. They found, guess what? It actually improves neonatal outcomes. Neonatal death is decreased by over 50%. There's no adverse complications. There's no readmissions. It's not statistically significant from unvaccinated mothers. Yes, I have 3 cats. It's my cat here. I have Donut Miss Kitty and Poofy, Mr. Floofers. That's the one I named, Mr. Floofers. So it looked at all those things. It found that no, we don't have issues, mostly to quell fears of people that are worried about getting vaccinated during pregnancy. They have strong records of these mothers. Oh, I thought I heard one, sorry. Yeah, no worries. It might have been me. Every once in a while my throat hurts and I'll go, from talking too much. I'm not sick. So they excluded mothers that were very young, less than 12, mothers that were older than 50, and they got rid of preemie babies. They only looked at single births, not twins. They had people that were vaccinated in the first, second, and third trimester, and they looked at that. They looked at multiple doses, up to 3. They did note that socioeconomic status seems to be influential on vaccination uptake, most likely due to knowledge, access, financial barriers. One of the interesting things that they found is that it didn't seem to matter how many doses of the vaccine you got or when in the pregnancy you got the vaccine. All of them seemed to confer similar effects. So, so long as you get vaccinated at least once during pregnancy, it seems to be very beneficial for neonatal outcomes. This fits with what we've been seeing in the literature in terms of vaccination, which shows that the COVID vaccine has a very high, a good safety profile. It's not going to cause these adverse events, and that it's going to be very beneficial, especially for pregnant persons. And again, it drops the infant mortality rate by about 50%. Okay, missed some comments. I go and random live swarm people about long COVID, and last night there was a pregnant girl, and I told her that COVID and RSV cases were super high, and she appreciated me looking out, and I didn't get blocked by moms for once. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, people that are pregnant should 100% get vaccinated if they can. Doesn't really matter what vaccine it is, if it's Novavax or one of the mRNA ones. Just as an awareness, the Novavax doesn't have a lot of data yet behind it. That doesn't mean it's bad, it just means that we don't know enough about it. It doesn't have long-term data for how long it confers immunity for. We don't know the effects of taking it in combination with other vaccines, so if you got the Novavax and the flu, we don't know what the effects are. It doesn't have that type of studying. They don't really have much in the way of checking, like this study here, for maternal pregnancy and vaccination. However, from what we know about protein-based vaccines, it should theoretically still provide a very good immune response. It's just to keep those things in mind with Novavax if you choose that as your vaccine selection. But again, some people have allergies to the vaccine component, some people get very severe MCAS reactions to the mRNA vaccines. So that's some of the reasons why people should get Novavax as an alternative, and definitely that's a good alternative. It's just something to be aware of. We'll know more when more studies come out, but that's what we know for now. Cool. Well, I am going to hop off for now. I'm going to do a little stuff around the house, and then I'll read the next paper. I'll give you a little preview of what that paper is. No, I don't want to save the supplemental information. Yes, have a good day. I'll just pop in and do it later. But yeah, have a good day. Bye, everyone.